Hi, I'm Ashley Cooley, a birth, baby, and sleep specialist and mom of 3. There's so much information out there, right? This show is dedicated to helping you clear out the noise so you can figure out what will work best for your baby and your family. If you're looking to learn more about your baby, gain more confidence in your parenting, and get as much sleep as you can through it all, you've come to the right place. Bringing up baby is about to get a little easier. Hey everybody, Ashley here. So in today's episode, Kelsey Marr and I, Dr. Marr, are chatting about, well, lots of things really, but anxiety and pregnancy, what the research says. She really comes from this birth research background, and it's really interesting and important, I think, to use research in our decision making when we're making decisions based on our care, our the way we parent, all the things when it comes to having babies. So I hope you find this episode helpful, and also want to say you're going to be hearing from Kelsey more. So as you will soon hear in this episode, spoiler alert, she's off social media for the time being, but she has a really great message and information, research to share. And so we're going to be chatting more often together on the podcast and talking about, well, we got different topics. We got different things we're going to talk about and things that you're curious about too. So anyway, stay tuned. Check us out at Birth Baby Sleep on Instagram, where we like to interact with you and get some suggestions and comments and questions for our podcast here. And we'd really love to hear from you if there's something you want to learn more about, what the research says basically when it comes to your pregnancy, birth, postpartum experience, etc., etc. All right, so without further ado, please meet my friend Kelsey. Enjoy the conversation, and we'll be back with more. Hi, Kelsey. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming. I was going to say, thanks for coming in studio. No, not a studio, just my couch in my living room. No, but thanks for being here. We've met a little while ago. We've been working together a little bit, hopefully doing some much more work together soon, but you might be a little bit busy in the short term, but I'm excited you're here. We have a lot to talk about, and I thought maybe we could just start off by getting you to introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Kelsey Marr. Right now I work as a birth and postpartum doula full-time. But before that, I actually did a PhD in reproductive anthropology and worked as a birth researcher for about 14 years. So I find that to be a really cool element of doing birth work now, is really looking at what the research says and what it can tell us about these experiences that we're going through, and how we marry that with our own personal lives and values and stories. And that's been really interesting for me in the last 13 weeks because I'm currently pregnant with my first child.
Yay! We're excited about that for you. And I've always found it to be so interesting and cool when I meet someone who's in this field and doing doula work, for instance, and you haven't had your own baby yet. So just knowing how valuable that service is and what you provide for families now. And you're going to get the first-hand experience on the other side soon, which is wild. And I'm sure you have thoughts and feelings about it too. But I'd love to chat first about your experience as a birth researcher and, doing that for 14 years. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but research is extremely important, and extremely important in this field where there's a lot of anecdotal things out there. There's a lot of what's best for me in hospital versus what have you. Can you tell us a bit about have there been like emerging themes or things that you've learned as your time as a birth researcher and now as a doula and meeting with families? How relevant is that, and how are you bringing that to the table?
Yeah, I think that one of my real strengths as a doula is my background in research. And I think that's a big part of why people decide to work with me in particular, that they're looking for that in a doula. And so that's one of the reasons that they come to me. But I think one of the emerging themes that I really see is that relationship that you mentioned between anecdotal evidence and in what we might call empirical evidence. Anecdotal evidence, like people's stories about their births, or if we hear an influencer's story about their birth on social media, that's still important information for us. We use that type of evidence or those types of stories or narratives or personal experiences every day when we make decisions about what we're going to do, right? Like if I was looking for a sleep consultant, I'm going to ask my sleep consultant friend where to go. If I'm looking to buy a car, I'm going to go talk to my dad and his experiences with different cars, right? Like none of that is research based, but that is all important information that we use on a daily basis. And so I think it's understandable that people go to social media, or they go to their friend, or they go to their loved one to learn about birth, because this is something, until we do this, most people aren't in my position where you're attending other people's births before you give birth.
Yeah, that's very true.
So we don't have any idea what it's like. And it's scary, and it can be overwhelming, and there's so much to learn. So we go to where we're comfortable to get information. The issue with anecdotal evidence is it's a little bit like looking out your window and basing how you're getting dressed for the day on what's happening outside of your window instead of the weather forecast. Like if I look out my window the other day when we had that terrible snowstorm for like an hour, it looked like I wasn't going anywhere for the next 3 days. Yeah. Right?
It looked pretty nasty.
It looked really bad. But when I texted my doula and was like, are you sure you want to drive in this? They had no idea what I was talking about, because where they were in Halifax, it looked totally different. So I always think of, like, if I were to hear somebody's birth story on social media, that's like just looking out my window. Whereas if I go to the empirical research, if I go to a medical journal or a well-researched book or evidence-based birth or something like that, that's more like looking at the weather forecast, where we've taken enough data, we've looked at it statistically. It's not going to guarantee us what the experience is like, but it does give us a better understanding of the possibilities than just one point of view.
Totally. I find those questions inevitably come up a lot in our prenatal classes, because again, usually they are first-time parents or about to be first-time parents coming to class. They may or may not know people that have already had a baby, so of course that runs the gamut. Those that do, they're coming in with a preconceived notion of what it's going to be like and what they're going to want or need in birth, and nothing wrong with that. We're coming in with a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of not familiarity, but coming in with something, but then it's putting that research against what you've been hearing. And so I just find it can be interesting to pool all that together, which again is important. You want the stories. Well, you don't always want the stories. Don't people, like, I find there's always something to, if you haven't been there and you haven't given birth before, and you hear somebody's story that's maybe not as sunshine and rainbows and beautiful as we all want it to be, then we kind of look at it like, oh crap, like this is going to be bad for me, or this is what I'm going. And so now we're going into birth or a prenatal class, or going into something with like all this hesitation.
Yeah.
Do you find that, like, when you're working with families too, do you find that sharing like the actual evidence, is that helpful for them? Like,
I think in a lot of ways it can be helpful, because it can put that risk in perspective. Like, we are inherently risk adverse. It's part of our biological makeup, right? We don't want to ever put ourselves at risk for harm, whether that's physical harm or emotional harm or psychological harm. And so I think when we hear, say, scary stories about, one that comes up a lot is people not wanting epidurals because they've heard stories on Instagram or TikTok about people getting like nerve damage and having lifelong back pain from an epidural.
Yeah.
But if you look at the research, and admittedly I can't give you the stat off of the top of my head, but if you look at the research, the chances of that happening are very, 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 very low. Now, there's all sorts of different risks and benefits with epidurals, and for some people they're a great option, and for other people they're not. But it's finding that balance between what level of risk you're personally willing to carry. And so it's never all about the research. It's never all about the stories. Like, making an informed choice is really thinking about taking all of that input and making that decision for yourself based on your life, your context, your background, what's going to be the best outcome for you.
Another question that comes up at pretty much every labor and delivery class is, when is it too late to get an epidural? And that I find everyone is worried about, because they know someone who knows someone who wanted one and it was too late and they said no. And I actually love getting that question because I love setting the record straight. And I love talking about, hey, actually, this is what you might experience, or this is what you can do if that's your experience. Yeah. And so I love doing the classes, much like I'm sure you love getting to share your knowledge in that research, because hopefully you'll see people's shoulders come down. Like, it's actually going to be more helpful to hear this research-based evidence.
Yeah, and it's I mean, in the same way when you can tell them, you know, XYZ, this is how it actually plays out in the hospital. Sometimes those fears, it's just about having information. It's not necessarily about what the information it says, what the information actually says. It's just like knowing what you can expect with some level of certainty. Yeah. Because we can't plan birth. Yeah. I would say that's one of the benefits of having done my job before having kids is I know
you get that. I get
very
much.
What level of flexibility I need to have with this experience. But in of that, there's still aspects that we can control or we want to control, and knowing the information, having some sort of grounded information that's reliable can make all the difference in that fear, no matter what that information is actually telling us. Yeah. Because, I mean, birth is not all sunshine and rainbows and
not always.
Roses.
Not
always.
Most of the time, actually. We have to go through a little bit of a forest to get to that sunshine and rainbow.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is really cool. And, a big part of the Bringing Up Baby podcast is sharing evidence-based information and giving it a practical spin, and like, how can you apply this to yourself, or what does this mean for you? So I know you and I are going to be talking more about this kind of stuff in some future episodes. But if you don't mind, I'd really love to chat about your pregnancy. Yeah. If that's all right. Because again, a doula who is pregnant and it's going to be your first baby, this is just fun for me. So you're 13 weeks.
13 weeks today.
Okay. Yeah. And how are we feeling?
Physically, I feel really well right now. There was definitely I
love that you say right now, because it might be different in an hour.
It's been different. Like 13 weeks, it hasn't been the same all 13 weeks, right? There were definitely, I think it was like week 7 and 8, I was just exhausted and nauseous, and thankfully that lined up really well with the Christmas holidays, so I just took 2 naps a day and went to bed early, and it was really chill.
Nice. That's good.
But actually the biggest issue for me has been prenatal anxiety and my mental health over the last really 3 to 4 weeks.
I mean, thanks for bringing that up, because I do meet so many people who are living with anxiety in their pregnancy, and we do talk a lot about perinatal mental health, which includes pregnancy and postpartum, though we tend to mostly hear about it through postpartum experiences. But there are so many people that can develop, or maybe they already have mental health issues and they're pregnant, and what that kind of brings. Do you mind describing what that's been like for you?
Yeah. So I anticipated to some degree having some level of prenatal anxiety. I live with an anxiety disorder, and so that predisposes me to be more likely to have perinatal mental health issues. There's kind of like two elements, I guess, to my anxiety. One is just like that feeling of overwhelm while you shut down. And for me, I just like feel immobilized, need to lie down on the couch, can't do everything. Everything seems like way too big of a task, even if it's like taking out the garbage or washing the dishes.
So we're going to shut it down.
So we just shut down.
Yeah, that's how I react too.
And just can't deal. And then the other part has really been focused around my work and my career, because right now I am self-employed, and I have family history where people's careers have ended when they had kids, and so I've got this fear that because I'm now having a child, that my career is going to end. And logically, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because of the field I work in. But
I think, well, you and I both know that mental health issues are never logical.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You know, there's a logical side of like, of course,
You
having a
understand
kid,
that.
and I understand that. But then there's also just this, what is a mental health struggle of how do I work through this anxiety that's already shaping this pregnancy so much for me?
So have you found some strategies for yourself that work? Like, what are you doing, if anything, to kind of work through some of that anxiety?
I think something I really advocate for both my birth clients and my postpartum clients is setting up like your support team early on in your pregnancy. So that can look like the people who you want with you along on your pregnancy and the people you want with you postpartum. And part of the reason I guide my clients to do that early in pregnancy is it's a lot easier to ask for help when you're not in to ask somebody for help when you're in crisis if you already know who they are and you've already had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
So a lot of time that conversation is around like, let's find your lactation consultant before baby comes and meet with them, so that if you have a lactation issue after baby comes, you already know that who you're going to call and who you're going to talk to about that problem. For me, I found a perinatal therapist as soon as I knew I was pregnant. So I have a therapist who, especially because I also have a history of pregnancy loss, she specializes in loss and kind of perinatal mental health. My doctor is on board, so we know since I have issues, we've adjusted my medication, because for me, medication is the right choice. And then I've also already hired my doula, because I know, even though I am a doula,
you need a doula too. Yeah.
I need my own doula, and I need that person to lean on throughout this journey as my emotional support.
Yeah, because when you're in those moments, you're Kelsey, mom, soon to be mom. Well, you're a mom, and you don't want to teach, and you don't want to have to do those things.
And you being a doula it's so much the hands-on support during birth and the educational support, but it is that like being the best friend who's not gonna give advice one way or the other, but who will listen to you. And I I can only do so much listening to myself. So I need somebody to do
we
that
all
for
need to
me.
hear things from other people sometimes
Exactly.
to reinforce maybe what we already know. But yeah, you'll be in a different position. So that sounds really great though, that you've already and right from the get-go, because you work in this field, so you've seen and already know how valuable it is. But that you're doing that for yourself is incredible. Looking for the best for your baby? Atlantic Canada's Baby Store is here for you. Nurtured, which is right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, has the best products for baby. The staff are so incredibly helpful, and they have the most top-rated car seats and strollers you won't find anywhere else. So whether you need expert advice or the perfect baby gear, Nurtured's got you covered. Nurtured, supporting your parenting journey every step of the way. What about the information you've been receiving? Because I joke about it, and maybe we can laugh about it, but it's also kind of a not such a funny thing, is that there's a lot of information out there and there's maybe too much. How has that been coming at you? Was it like the second you peed on a stick, your social media knew, and now you're getting all the things? Was it kind of like that?
It was interesting because I have my business social media accounts and my personal accounts.
Okay. Yeah.
And my business social media accounts, of course, are heavily tuned to birth and already. Yeah. But my personal accounts flipped like a switch as soon as we got pregnant. And actually for myself, I made the decision a week and a half ago to just delete the social media off of my phone.
Talk to us about that.
Which I made the decision. I don't post on my personal accounts ever often. But as a small business owner, there is this expectation that you are present and available on social media at all times. And I know for me, that takes a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of mental load. And we know from the research that social media is not a good space for our mental health. It's a space where we do a lot of comparison and a lot of judgment. It's a space where we do a lot of judgment of ourselves.
Whether we realize it or not.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know, you open the phone, and if your post got 50 likes or 10 likes or whatever, you feel good about yourself. And if it didn't, you're wondering what you did wrong. And so from that perspective, I knew that because I was already struggling with my mental health, that I needed to take a step back. That also has a really kind of tenuous feeling to it, because I feel like as a business owner, I should be showing up in those spaces, or that I'm expected to show up in those spaces in a certain way. So it's on the one hand, it's been, well, I don't know what my business is doing online for the last 2 weeks. On the other hand, it's like been really nice not to be like, my phone is nothing but a phone right now. I'm not glued to it. I know the amount of time I spend a day on my phone has decreased from about 4 hours to less than 1 hour, which
sounds
is
like a
probably
dream.
doing a whole lot of good things for my brain.
Yeah. I totally understand it could have been, I know it would have been for me a difficult decision to, because you're right, as a business owner, the online presence can be extremely helpful. But you doing this as a self-care for yourself, of knowing that, like, and maybe or maybe not, social media wasn't necessarily a culprit. Like, you can't say, oh, it was that post or it was this thing that I'm not doing this. But because the research tells you what it's doing, you maybe have seen in yourself how, like you said, with the likes or something like how you can react to it. I just love personally that you put it out there. You put it out on your social media. Hey guys, I'm going to be taken off for a little while because of this, and you're very open with this being a mental health thing. You probably didn't notice if anyone sent you messages after that, because you got right off.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure I was one of those people. I'm sure you've got some there of like, good for you. Like, it's a hard decision to make because you're a business owner, but you're taking your own personal wellness putting that at the top of the list.
Yeah.
So,
and
cheers.
I mean, one of the things that we know about this transition to, I'm going to say motherhood, because that's what I know the research about, but parenthood. But this transition to motherhood is that our priorities shift along this journey. We know that as we go, as people who identify as mothers, as we go through pregnancy, give birth, and through that period of postpartum, we're not only creating a baby, we're creating a mother. We're creating that identity for ourselves. And in that mothering identity, our priorities around what we think is important and what we want to do and what our plans are, all of those are going to change. And so I also see this, to answer your question, am I going to go back? I don't know yet. The plan so far is to take a break until March and just see how I'm feeling. But this is also an opportunity for me to reevaluate how I want to run my business and run my marketing. Where is my priorities over until my baby comes, because after that I'll be on leave, and I'm sure there'll be another shift in priorities and how I want to run the business. But like, is putting my time into building the digital marketing what I want to do as a small business owner, or is it, like we've both said, just something that we feel like we have to be doing or should be doing?
I don't see as much when I am on social media, and I too I talk to a lot of people that are now like, I'm gonna peel back from this, or I'm gonna take more breaks from this, or because I think we're all starting to really be like, hey, this is a lot, we're spending a lot of time here,
and there is like a political and ideological factor to it as well, right? Like, there's a lot happening,
and it can be helpful. It can be so helpful for so many things. So I think that's where I myself personally, I'm like, but I get to do XYZ, or I get to learn this, but then there's also this other side,
right? And I mean, that's has been all part of the decision too. I had the amazing but like strange experience of the week before I deleted my social media. I met two strangers who came up to me and knew me from social media, which is
out in public, out in the wild.
Out in the wild, people were like, "Oh, you're Kelsey. Like, I follow you on social media."
Okay,
and I was like, "This is amazing, but really weird."
Yeah.
But then they also commented on how like my content is helpful.
Content.
They appreciate me showing up in those spaces. And if I can do things like talk openly about my miscarriage or talk openly about perinatal mental health in those spaces, I mean, I'm not looking to drive the conversation, but at least maybe that's somewhere that somebody's seeing that conversation.
Exactly. It is important when you were putting out content, I'm focused on social media for some reason, but when you were putting out content and sharing like what the research says in these early times of pregnancy, and these are so like already building people up, it's like, don't worry, I got you. Yes, you're hearing stories. Yes, you're finding this anecdotal stuff, and it's all great, but let's put it with this research too.
Right. And I think early pregnancy is a particular time where we have so much fear, because most of us have never been pregnant, don't have baby experience. Your body's going through massive changes. But also because there's this tendency not to talk about pregnancy openly during the first trimester, we don't talk about it as much. You know, like, we're maybe from movies familiar with the idea of like vomiting and fatigue as early pregnancy symptoms, but we probably don't talk nearly as much about like cramping or body aches or you know, or mental health as pregnancy symptoms as well. So I think it's important to create those spaces where we're having those conversations.
Which is why I'm glad you're here today and we're having this conversation. I think this is great. I'm happy to get to talk to you and to put this out there, whether or not you are on social media, you are out in the wild, you are around, and sharing more of this research stuff. And you're going to be doing that a little bit more with us on the Bringing Up Baby podcast. So a great medium, I think, to share your message but share the research on what's out there. So yeah, thanks for coming to chat, and let's keep doing it.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.
If you're looking for more information or support along your parenting journey, check out birthbabysleep.ca. That's where you're going to find prenatal classes, postpartum and new baby resources, and sleep support during the childhood years. Lastly, but certainly not least, if you got something out of this episode or our show in general, leaving a rating or a quick review goes a really long way to helping others find us. So please consider leaving one. That's all for now. I'm Ashley Cooley, and we'll see you back here next time.